All right, good evening. This is March the 12th, 2022, and it's 6 o'clock Colorado time, and I'm here to do a live Q&A. It'll take me a few minutes to kind of get warmed up into it probably because I've been doing multiple things all day long. It's just one of those days. I'm a little bit distracted, but I'll get into this in a little bit. I just have to try to have some patience with me. Let's see if we've got a connection. It appears to be working just fine. Okay, that's good. All right, so the first question I've got is from Ron in Southern California, and this is about 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 8 through 11. I'm going to go ahead and just read it first. 1 Peter chapter 5, beginning in verse 8, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Resist him, steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. But may the God of all peace, who called us to his eternal glory by Christ Jesus, after you have suffered a while, perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you. To him be the glory and the dominion forever and ever. Amen." All right, so the question is, does this passage describe that the prerequisite to being perfected and sanctified in Christ is that we must first suffer a little while before we can be saved? And that's because of verse 10, "But may the God of all grace, who called us to his eternal glory by Christ Jesus, after you have suffered a while." So yeah, you can kind of get that impression that maybe this is referring to a condition that you have to suffer first, and then you can get the eternal glory. I can see how that can be assumed by some people. I can see how somebody could potentially read that, but I don't see that is what Peter was intending to say at all. I really don't. To me, it says that he is speaking to people who have already been saved, and he's letting them know, look, you are going to have some struggles in life. And he uses the devil as a potential source for the sufferings of life that you're going to be faced with. There's a lot of potential sources. We can cause problems for ourselves. Other people can cause problems for us. The devil and his angels, a whole lot of demons. It's very unlikely you're going to see the devil personally in your life. It's usually going to be somebody else. But we like to say the devil, or just to give a name to the collective. But they are still participants in our lives. They're still here, just like they always were. But they don't show themselves as much like they would do in the past, because we now have Christians who have authority in the name of Jesus to be able to address the issues that the demons present. So they're a little bit more subtle now. Also, when they surface, they can give people inspiration, because they say, well, gosh, if there's evidence that there's a demon, then that also means by default that's evidence that there is also a God, which I've used many times. All right, so to me, this is saying, look, you guys are going to encounter sufferings in life, but as you go through it, when you come on the other side of it, you're going to experience an increase. And this list, to me, describes that kind of increase. After you have suffered a while, perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you. These are words that describe an increase in your quality. All right, you are certainly perfected in Christ Jesus when you are saved. From a certain point of view, you are perfect in Him. That's true. However, you as a person are still growing. You're still changing. You're continuing to move in the direction of perfection. Does this give you some greater status in heaven? I don't see it at all. But I certainly am not the same person that I was when I first got saved. And I would say that there are some areas of my life that could be described as an increase in perfection. All right? not many, but, I can relate to that in some ways. When he says, establish, that we may, that I've suffered a while, I can have a sense of establishment. Definitely, a lot more fortitude when I come to the other side of the sufferings I've experienced. A lot more strength. The more you go through, the stronger you are. This is a big mistake that a lot of people make with me. They assume that because I'm really nice, in many cases, I'm really weak. Well, no. And sometimes that gets exposed and people get surprised. So tremendous amount of strength and fortitude and settle you in the sense of peace and in the sense of surety. There are a lot of qualities that can be increased in our lives as we grow and change, in different ways to measure that. But these are all personal things, and it's something that happens between us and our God as He works with us through the sufferings that we encounter. But I don't see any relationship here to salvation at all, or I just don't see it. So let me go back to the question: does this passage describe that the prerequisite for being perfected and sanctified in Christ is that we must first suffer? I don't see that at all. I really don't. To me, this is a description of after a person has been saved that describes the transitions of life that we're going to have. I thought that then you go on, you say, I thought that perfection, strengthening, and the settling all happened at the very moment when the restored Spirit of God that was lost in Adam comes and lives in us when we become saved. Yes, you are perfect in Christ from a certain point of view. You are strengthened to a degree. You can feel a sense of settlement. That's true. But wait a year later, or 5 years later, and 10 years later, and just ask the Lord. Lord, can you show me anything about maybe an increase in perfection in my being, or do I have an increase in strength in who I am? Is there an increase of peace in my heart, in my life? Has there been any changes like that you can maybe show me? And He will, and I would expect, and the way that He will relate this to you is going to be something like, you remember that real ugly struggle you had, that really big suffering that you had, and you went through that, and you got to the other side of that, and then you were different. You're different. So this is a way of describing those kinds of differences. All right, that's my first shot at that question. If you want more clarity concerning that, then ask me some more. Okay, can you explain? This is about the Sabbath law. Can you explain 2 Kings chapter 4 verse 23 in light of Exodus 16:29? Okay, what was happening was Elisha. And Elisha had given a promise. I have the whole chapter here, which I read earlier today, and before. But we've got the Shunammite woman, and she was without a son, and through the miracle, as Elijah had foretold, she had a son, but then he died. All right, so he died, and then I'll go down to verse 21. I scrolled too far. Give me just a moment. Like I said, I'm going to be disoriented a little bit. 2 Kings chapter 4, and then I have to scroll down. Chapter 4, verse 21, and she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, shut the door upon him, and went out. Then she called to her husband and said, please send me one of the young men and one of the donkeys, that I may run to the man of God and come back. So he said, why are you going to him today? It is neither the new moon nor the Sabbath. And she said, it is well. It doesn't matter if it's the new moon or the Sabbath. There was apparently, by this verse, during the time of Elisha, apparently there was a relationship between Elisha and the people who were within reasonable distance from him, that on the Sabbath or on the new moon, it appears he was available. Like right now, here I am. It's Saturday. The sun hasn't quite gone down yet at this time of year. There is not 3 stars visible in the sky. I suppose you could say, I'm available on the Sabbath day. That's one way to look at it. And it appears that there was something customary about this at that time. But the question is, how does this fit with Exodus chapter 16, verse 29, where it says, see, the Lord has given you the Sabbath, therefore he gives you on the 6th day bread for 2 days. Let every man remain in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. And with that command, it's been somewhat recognized that you don't leave your dwelling place on the Sabbath day. All right, so why would she leave her dwelling place on the Sabbath day to go talk to Elisha? Well, it could very well be that during this time with Elisha and in this region, there was no enforcement to this degree. All right, and that it was just something that people were doing. If they were violating the law, then what you have is a description of them violating the law. All right, it doesn't have to be. If it was written by man, I would expect that we would make sure that we didn't write it like that, But this is not a historical record that is just written by man. In my opinion, this is inspired by God, and in that way, it's reasonable for us to have a record of what happened, even if it was wrong. But this is what happened. So, you may be able to raise an issue and say, Elisha should have told her, hey, you're violating the Sabbath law. You can have a conversation with Elisha about that later, I suppose, and see what he has to say. Save it for him. Save the question for him. You don't have to ask me the question. All right. But in my opinion, this is just simply a description of what happened, and there's a little bit of revelation about how the people related to Elisha at this time. They may have kind of had an agreement that Elisha's dwelling was close enough to their dwelling that it was still kind of in their dwelling. They could say it is in the same neighborhood kind of thing. There was the potential for that. Okay, that's about the best I think I can do for that particular question. Okay, let me see. And then I got some new stuff, and I'm going to quit early, looks like. I got work to do still tonight, so I'm going to be anxious to go ahead and get offline, so this might be a little short. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so this is left over from last week, all right? And I have a suspicion that a lot of you have been waiting, waiting. Okay, well, he almost answered it, but then he didn't. Okay, what's going on right now in the news with the conflict and the war and that kind of thing? The first thing I want to say is the reason why I felt very comfortable about waiting is because in situations like this, usually the first information you get is normally wrong or distorted, and so you gotta wait. You gotta wait a while, I think, to see what other kind of information may be able to get through here or there. And so, I when it comes to something like this, I would prefer to wait. In fact, even right now, I'd kind of like to wait a little longer to speak too much about it. I'm not making any of the decisions. I'm not physically present in where all this activity is happening. And so, I do have access to people who have access themselves that fewer people have in some cases, but but I don't mind not answering this question because I don't think I have enough information to be worthy of answering this as well as people would like me to. But there are some things that I can say that I would encourage you to look for, and so that's how I figured I would answer this question, is to maybe just kind of speak about some generalities of things that you might or might not be aware of, just maybe remind you, and then it'll help you to look a little closer at what's happening, and then you can make your own decisions about things. So I got a list of things to talk about. Let me let me start with this, and as I go, I start with this. You're going to think, how is this related to this? But don't worry, it'll fit. Okay, you got to have some patience. All right, have you ever seen 3 to 4 year olds play with blocks with 5 and 6 year olds? This is a good study. Watching like a 3-year-old playing with blocks with a 5-year-old kind of thing. What you'll find in many cases is that the 5-year-old is going to be looking for ways to stack the blocks. And to them, that's playing with the blocks. That's what you do with blocks. You stack them. You make big towers and big structures and stuff. You create things, you build things. And by the time you're 5 or so, we would expect you to be able to build some stuff. And to them, that is play. That is good play. And that's a healthy way to play with other kids even. That's what you do. But you get a 3-year-old in there, and, they don't really know how to build stuff. They're just not quite there, ready to stack the blocks and build something. That's just not where they're really at. So, what can they do? How can they play? How can they participate? How can they be a part of what's going on? Well, they can knock the blocks down. Okay, that's what they can do. They can do that. You build something, I'll knock it down. And it's so funny to watch the 3-year-olds who do this. They knock something down, they just destroy it, and they just go, like, yay! I played with my friend. I was a part of something. See, I could participate. And of course, the 5-year-old is really upset because they put all this work into building something, and then this 3-year-old comes along and just knocks it all over the place. Right? Well, that's a big part of what you're seeing, okay? What you're seeing is that some people are trying to build things, and other people, they think that if you destroy things, you're participating, And you might think that a lot of people would have gotten over that by the age of 5, but no, there's lots of people who just don't ever get over that. They really think that the destruction of something is a healthy thing. It's a positive way to relate with those around you. You just destroy something that somebody else is building, and there just simply are lots of people like that. This usually shows up later, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this. It shows up later when you run into somebody who's got the ability to get in your way, and they do it as if they think that's like some kind of public service or something, and to them that's the activity. All right, so you take the 3 to 5 year old block playing stuff and you apply it to the war. All right. And you might think, now, Aaron, these are like, 50 and 60-year-old and 70-year-old people. Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean that they're still not acting like a bunch of 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds. I mean, if you look at some of the things that people are saying on the news, it sounds to me like that could be the 3-year-old and 5-year-old style of solving problems, And so you need to keep that in mind when you're seeing what's going on in this conflict happening in Ukraine or any other conflict that's happened in history even. Just because there are people who are making decisions and people who are in power doesn't mean that they're competent at all. All right, it doesn't mean that they're grown up. They can easily just be a bunch of little boys and little girls who just don't know any better, and they actually think that they're contributing in a positive way. All right. And I get the sense of that when I look at the news. I do. I get the sense of that. All right. Let me give you another example of just how off some of these people can be. You've probably heard the idea of the climate, the weather, and we gotta save the planet kind of stuff. You got people who are like, we have to have laws and we have to have people in power who's going to save us from the sun, and other weather-related issues. Folks, to me, this is real easy, in my opinion. To me, this is just another form of the ancient religion. That's all it is. It's just an ancient, or let me say a different. I should use a different word. The proper word probably would be primitive. This is a primitive religion, all right? And the religion is, give me money and make me in charge, and I will protect you from the sun god, all right? Now, if you didn't get that, I'll say it again, all right? These people who are talking about the dangers of climate adjustments and, weather-related whatever, we have to have taxation and we have to have laws, I mean, there's some people who are talking about cows passing gas, as if that's a big problem. So we got to make sure you don't have that many cows. This is because if we do, the sun god is going to get you. The sun god is coming after you. So don't worry, I will be your priest. And that's what these people are. They're priests of the sun god. But they call it something else. It's all been repackaged in this new way that seems to be acceptable to the intellectual. All right. And these are people who are making these kinds of decisions that is leading to World War III. All right. Think about that. I mean, these are the kind of people who are doing this. I mean, I was on a government website recently. And there was a selection for something, and I saw this list of genders. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have seen this yet, but a list of gender. I mean, I thought that there were more different potential genders than how many states and territories there presently are in the United States. I mean, that was a list, a big list, I mean, we've got people who don't even know what gender is, who are making these kinds of decisions. These are your leaders. All right, I know I know it can be upsetting, but all you can do sometimes is just laugh. I'm laughing because in some ways it's quite comical, and in other ways it's scary. But that's partially what makes it funny too. When Rome was being invaded, I think for the last time, when they finally were done. If I remember right, the leaders, they were in Rome. You know what they were arguing about? What was the gender of angels? All right. And that's what we got going on now. What do these people think? They think that, we'll just go to war. Yeah, right. With who? A bunch of people who are wearing dresses and who are in the military, and if you're a lady, I think that's great. But for guys wearing dresses, that can be awkward sometimes. It just can. So, I mean, look at the commercials, right? The commercials for the Russian military, volunteer, be all you can be kind of Russian style, and then compare that with the be all you can be American style, and you think that this is going to be different. All right, look, I know we got some great people in the military. I know that. I was in it too. For my sake, fortunately, at a war, I had just left a battalion that I was a part of. Just before they went one of the battalions just before they went into battle, and they were totally wiped out. Totally wiped out. Just they're gone. That was in Iraq. I don't think that was even reported really. So, I mean, I have some familiarity with these things in other situations. Obviously, I'm alive, So, I'm not saying things to just be negative or whatever, but folks, when we can't even figure out what a gender is, you want to go to war against these other people? No, but see, that's the point, is that the people who are making these decisions, they're not going to go to war. You are. All right? I mean, we got these people who are in charge are making these decisions, and, we got bigger weapons now since World War II. We got nuclear weapons. That's what we got. And these people who are in charge, right? And I've been around people like this. Their attitude is simple. Well, we got a bunker. We're going to go in there. And you think, well, what about the rest of us? And they say, if I did that well, yeah, that's it, I mean, that has no relevance. You guys go fight. We're going to go in the bunker. All right, that's who's making these decisions, right? And, when it comes to nuclear weapons, there's a button that launches these things, right? There's a red button. I'll call it the red button. Anybody know where this button is? Anybody know whose finger is next to this button? I mean, we know who it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be the person who got, elected, who's supposedly in charge, right? But you think that guy's got the button? No, there's no way. I mean, I can't. Possibly there's that much incompetence of the people around him, but for some reason, I just don't think so. I think the people around him know that it's better not to let him have the button. So who's got the button? Who's got the big red button? We don't know. Nobody knows. And if we did, I mean, that's what's going on, folks. I mean, it's so you wonder why there's just a lot of noise coming out of Western civilization. That's why. It's just a bunch of noise, because we don't even know who's got the button or if they got their finger on it. And and if somebody gets a hold of it and they're the wrong person, well, what then, right? That's who these people are, all right? So these are the good things to kind of keep in mind. Another thing that I noticed a lot when I was younger, and I was a part of a lot of these things, is that there's a belief that if you have the power to destroy something, then you're in charge of it. You're in control, and you'll see this happen where people will be making decisions. And I'll give you an example, the idea of sanctions, okay? Let me tell you what this is, all right? It's really simple. We don't like what you're doing, so we can stop you from spending your money, your dollars. We can stop that. So we're going to do that. We have the power to stop you from spending dollars. So we're going to do that, and that's going to make everything work. That's going to make everything good, because you'll eventually give in. And, well, if you haven't noticed, that hasn't changed anything at all. But it's power. Sure, people did that, right? Whoever they are, they did that. They made those decisions, and what does he do? Nothing, except hurt us, right? Okay. So the power to destroy something, or the power to stop someone from doing something, is not what people really think it is. But this is how people think, right? I mean, they genuinely do. So when sanctions are declared, it's like saying, well, now you guys need to understand that you can't spend your dollars unless you have our permission, and we're not going to give you our permission. Well, folks, that's just not going to go for very long. And you know what? Maybe they don't care at all. I mean, maybe a little, possibly. Maybe they say, well, we'll wait it out, or we'll give it to somebody who can spend them for something else. I mean, this is a big world, and there are a lot of ways to manage that kind of thing. It's not as difficult as people might think. Now, what you're watching take place is the fall of Western civilization. To me, that's the best way to understand it. All right, when you've got things like we don't even know who's got the button, and we can't even figure out what a gender is. I mean, that is definitely the fall of civilization. And there's no recovering from that, all right? It's going to go down. It needs to go down. It will go down. I don't want to, speed it up. I'm just saying that it's going. The people who are making these decisions are exceptionally self-destructive, and you can only protect them so long before they finally destroy themselves. all right? They're going to do it. and when it's all done, then, and the smoke clears, then there'll be something better. But the Eastern civilization, Asia, is going to be it, to include Russia, I'm sure, and they're going to be the ones who endure this. Another way to look at this is that you'll see that everybody's in the Western civilization, they're all talking about, we're not going to let you spend your money, kind of thing, or we're not going to do business with you. We're not going to give you money to buy your stuff. Yeah, right. First thing I saw when all this stuff broke out was I saw that the Russian coffee was out of King Soopers at the grocery store. I went there, I saw this section, it was just empty, I was cleared out. And I thought, now, what does this do? I mean, what we're saying we're not going to buy the Russians' coffee anymore? All right, so they keep their own coffee. So, I mean, to them, fine, they can keep their own coffee. They can drink their own coffee. Are they missing out because they don't get any dollars for this? No. They got their coffee. Or how about their natural gas? Oh, we're not going to buy your natural gas anymore. Well, fine. They'll keep it for themselves. They'll use it for themselves. They can, it's a cold place. They can heat their homes with that if they got an abundance. Hey, the price goes down. You see what I mean? I mean, there are people who really think, oh, I have the power to stop you from whatever. And, it's just pathetic. All right? I mean, it is absurd. The Russians should keep their natural gas. If their coffee's good, they should keep their coffee. What's the big deal? What are they, and what, if you give them dollars, what are they going to do with that? Are they going to buy oil now anymore from the Saudi Arabia? Folks, you guys are out of date. The Russians already made a deal with the Saudi Arabians and people over there. All right, this is a similar deal to what we used to have. Everybody forget that for some reason? I mean, that's just so out of style, so out of date. It's ridiculous. Okay, what else are they going to buy? Let me ask you, what's made in America? What? Okay? If there's a lot more stuff being made in China, and they're neighbors, well, they could send their natural gas over to China and get whatever they want. They don't even have to use dollars. Just send natural gas or whatever. I mean, that's the point, folks, is that, people are thinking that they are like powerful or they're influential or we're the decision makers. No, you're not. All right? And with a lot of the conflicts that I've had in my life, sometimes it's been better to let people think that they're in charge. Just to watch them hang themselves with their own rope, I mean, it's just ridiculous. I remember, I'll never forget one of the most important things someone said to me in a conflict. They said to me, "You just don't get it." And they were right. But I remember that, so that now I know I might not get it. I might not. I got to wait. I got to think. I got to figure it out. I got to get it because I just don't get it, but I will. And in a lot of circumstances, the best solutions in circumstances have occurred when I would just do nothing. Absolutely nothing, and just wait, and it would be solved. So those are some important principles, I think, to keep in mind when you're watching all this news going on, you're watching world events changing and stuff, is to consider some of these things. All right, some other details, and this is a good example of something else to keep in mind, and that is that it's just about impossible for there to be one single explanation for a major event like this. Even in small events, you normally don't have one simple explanation, like, why is this happening? Well, it's happening because of this. For example, people are saying Russia is invading Ukraine. They're invading. All right, so anybody want to ask why? No. Never ask why. No. Just say that they are evil and we are going to do something about it, so we are the heroes. A bunch of losers, all right? Listen, I can give you a good example, all right? What happens if there are some folks in Ukraine who are shelling other folks over in the eastern part over there, and all those people, they speak Russian. They're Russians. They're not Ukrainian. They're part of that. And people are dying, and you add on top of that, what happens when the Ukrainian government says, oh, you Russians over there in the east, you can't participate in the decision-making process in the government unless you speak Ukrainian to the satisfaction that we find acceptable. Until then, you folks cannot be participants. So if you got people who are being killed and they're told that they can't participate in the legislative process at all right, you think it's reasonable for them to say, hey, I guess we're going to have to just be on our own, because you are on your own, except for the bullies over there, and so what do? They say, we got to have help. We got to have help. We got people who are dying. We need help. And there's nothing we can do to ask for help over there because they won't even let us be a part of it. We speak Russian. We don't even speak Ukrainian, if at all. So they ask for help. They ask their neighbors, hey, can you guys come in and help us out? And there's been no annexation, or there's no merging. The Russians have not said that this is now our land. They're just going in to help, and they're going to help and fix the problem. That's what they're going to do. But so far they're not saying you're all now part of Russia. And let me tell you, so these are parts, right? And there's a little bit of people over here involved in this, and a little bit of people involved in this part over here, and there's all these different interests that people have. You can't narrow it down to one thing. It's just a whole lot of stuff that's going on, and that's what you got to work with. You might wonder, well, why is it that the Russians have not declared that to now be their land? Well, this is easy. This is not hard at all. Those people have got debts, all right? How are the debts going to be handled? And if you're a Russian, part of Russia, you're going to get benefits. There's benefits from being a Russian. So how are you going to negotiate that when you take on a bunch of people who've got nothing but debts and they want benefits, right? What do they got to offer? Well, they do have some things to offer. There's more. So it's a big network web thing. There's just so many issues. On the western side, there's a lot of agriculture, and that's a big deal. When I mentioned what's made in America, you could say, well, we grow corn. Sure, okay. Well, in Ukraine, they grow corn too, and it's closer. All right, it's closer. So, well, on the eastern side, there's a lot of industry. I think it's in. I can't remember what town it is now, but I think the first area that Putin sent the military into, whatever that area was, if I remember correctly, that was where they were producing neon gas. Okay, and you might think, oh, Aaron, why are you saying neon gas? Well, that's important with the development of technology, microchips, stuff like that, electronics. Neon gas is part of the process of making a lot of things, and I think it might be 60% of the world's neon gas comes from that area. Putin sent the military right in there first, took control of that. So let me give you an idea of how this works. So the Americans, they say, well, you're not going to be able to do business with the Taiwanese because the Taiwanese, they're only going to accept payment for their electronics in dollars. And the Russians say, that's okay. We'll take the neon gas that the Taiwanese need in order to develop their products. You see, folks? All right? So you want products? You don't need to trade in dollars. Trade in gas. In this case, it's not natural gas, it's neon gas. Okay? Who needs dollars? Nobody needs dollars. And everybody's jumping around saying, we're going to issue sanctions. Yeah, right. Okay, no, that's not how the world really works. Okay, that's the pretend world that people are often so caught up in. It's not about that at all. All right, it has nothing to do with the money. Nothing to do with the money. Okay, arms sales, I put that one down there. Yeah, it's a big opportunity for people to sell weapons. You know, everybody's all afraid. We're going to have war. We need weapons. We got to buy it. You know, it's a good opportunity for the arms dealers. Maybe they were involved too in some way, saying, yeah, let's have a conflict. Let's give some ammo to some of these weird people over in Ukraine and to shoot the Russians over on the eastern side so we can start a conflict and sell more guns. Okay? I am sure there's some of that going on there somewhere. I don't know where. I don't need to know. I have confidence, that there's something like that happening in there. You've also probably noticed that there's not so much talk about the medical issues going on. Now, this is something I'm concerned about and I'm watching for, because some people are saying, oh, well, then that means it's all over. And I'd be willing to say, oh, no, now it's worse. And the reason why I would say this is worse is because you'll see that many of the restrictions and the infrastructure for the restrictions have not been lifted. And so now it's considered to be normal. All right? The presence of this supposed medical threat is now normal. It's so normal that it's not even in the news. It's just an accepted part of our society. All right. You get a message on your phone. It tells you to stay home for 2 or 3 weeks. You can't go anywhere, and then that's normal. Okay. I'm waiting to see if that is what's really going to happen. Okay. I'm waiting to see if that's how it's going to really play out, and that's awful. Okay, folks. But that is part of the destruction of Western civilization. All right, gender issues, the sun god, and there's some deadly who knows what maybe in existence. All right, let's see what else I got here. Oh, I already talked about that point and that point and that point. So that's it. Yeah, I got one more little comment here that I could probably add to this, that in the end, this is how you're going to see it play out. This is something that I have confidence in, what you're going to see. What will happen in the way that this will end up being settled in the sense of once all the dust settles, is that you're going to see a recoordination or a rearrangement of who owns resources. That's what it's going to look like. And sometimes it can be really difficult to identify what really are the resources. But when all this settles, when all this is done, that's how it's going to be different. Like I said, with the neon gas coming from that, I think it's from the southeastern part of Ukraine at that point. I think it was the first place that the Russians went in. That's the resource. Okay, and that's what they will use to trade with the Taiwanese. They're not going to use dollars. They're going to use that. So it will be settled with that. With the Western Ukraine, it's going to be interesting to see who takes control over the agriculture there. I think that's going to be kind of an interesting play. But again, all I can do is watch and wait and find out later. Is there the potential for World War III? Absolutely. Like I said, we don't even know who's got the button. So, of course, there's lots of potential for that. I've been waiting, to see what the likelihood is for this to happen soon. And I personally don't see enough to excite me to say that this is going to happen real soon. Maybe in a year, maybe, but from what I have available, I have to make a decision about how I'm going to manage my own personal life. And at the moment, I'm managing my own personal life as if the high probability of a major global conflict won't be until this time next year. It's kind of how I'm thinking about it. And of course, that could change tomorrow. I have to make decisions today about what I'm going to do, and I try to make the best ones I can. And that's what I'd like to encourage people to do as well. Okay, so that's kind of an overall view of some things that I think if you kind of keep those things in mind, and you get information that if you keep those additional things in mind, it will maybe give you some help or maybe give you some direction in terms of what to look for, of what may be important, what may not be important. And then, of course, you have to make decisions for yourself about, okay, so what are you going to do? You personally. What are you going to do today to make your life a little bit different because of what you see happening in the world? And what are you going to do tomorrow? And just stay focused on your decisions. When you don't even know who has the button or their finger on the button, when you don't even know that, it's better to just stay focused on what you can make decisions concerning, okay? And what you can do for yourself to make your life better for tomorrow and for a year later or 2 years later. And that's how I would answer that kind of a question right now. Okay, all right. So if anybody's got any questions for me to work on for the next 2 weeks, please do send them in. Send them to aaron@aaronbudjen.net, and that's the email inbox that I use for this live Q&A. And I'll be back in 2 weeks to try to contribute. All right. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye.